Hey everybody, it's Mark again, and I hope that you enjoyed my last video on uh, cleaning up the movement, polishing up the pivots, the escapement wheel and the second wheel pivot, and stuff like that. Well, in this video, we're going to put that movement back together, and we're going to also show you the difference between a regular 25 one-day movement and a regular 34, which is an 8-day movement. Again, I hope that you're all enjoying this video sets. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And, when you hit that subscribe button, you get notifications. I get notifications while I'm on Facebook saying, with a recommendation of my videos, which is kind of funny. I also get recommendations while I'm on YouTube channels to watch my videos, which is extremely funny. But you should get recommendations while you're on YouTube, and you should get notifications of new videos that I put out. Also, while you're on YouTube, on my channel, you can use the search button and search for videos that I have. I do have a YouTube video that explains how to do all that. But anyway, let's get started. This, by the way, is and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Batch Major Meyer and Clemmer was the maker of this clock. They used the Regula movement. They stamped their name right here. It also says made in West Germany. And then there's some GM numbers up here. And I think they're kind of like patent numbers. Honestly, I don't know on that. No jewels adjusted. I think it was mandatory for them to put that if it had a jewel. Like clocks sometimes have jewels in the pallets of the escapement wheel, and they would have a jewel on each pallet. So it would say 2 jewels adjusted or something like that. Pocket watches have jewels in them. And the answer to why those chains drop evenly at a certain point, but the weights get stuck on the coil, I believe is because there are link damages in the chain this far, and that's why it gets stuck, and that's why it'll work fine till the weights hit the floor. But I believe that there are link damage, and I can typically feel if there's a damaged link. But the links have to be a certain oval. They're not circle. They got to be a certain oval distance and diameter for them to work properly. And I might have missed a link, so I don't have enough chains. I have one day brand new chain. I'm going to order brand new chains for this clock because I have somebody who's wanted to buy this clock. But I also could be wrong on that. There could be another issue. So I don't want to give her the clock until I got the clock fixed. And I've been working on it way too long. But anyway, we're going to put this thing together. And because I'm going to use, I told you I'm going to take the plate off of this 8-day movement to show you the difference. I'm going to use that stand. Well, yeah, I'm going to use the legs on this movement, and I'm going to use this piece of plumbing fixture to put this movement back together. The hammers came out, the high note and low note lift lever, and I never did discuss those, and so I'm sorry, and we're going to discuss them right now as soon as I get them out of this container. The high note lift lever is typically the longest lever. The low note lift lever is typically shorter on almost every cuckoo clock out there. On this particular clock, the low note lift lever goes in the middle and the high note lift lever goes at the bottom. If you don't put them on right now, without taking the gong off, you would have to pull up on the plate after you remove the nut, pull up on the plate and try to force it in there. It's a lot easier to put it on right now. So I always start on the time side. Time side, if you took pictures, you can refer to your pictures to help put the movement together, but I've done enough of these. I know what I'm doing. Time side goes down. The plastic wheel is connected to the minute arbor with center wheel. As you can see, it's spinning around. Next thing I want to grab is the time side second wheel. Here's the legs. I need to get them out of this container. Time side second wheel. Looks like no other wheel in the box on a 1-day movement. There's the pivot hole for it. It goes down because when you're putting these movements together, the pinion gears have to match up with the wheels. If I was to turn this thing around like so, it will not fit in there because of the ratchet wheel. The pinion gear on the second wheel matches up with the great wheel main wheel. Then the escapement wheel. Pinion gear is going to match up with the wheel on the second wheel. And then the verge and crutch assembly. Now we're working on the strike side. This section right here, which is the smallest diameter section, stand by, I'm going to fix these. I never did fix them from the last video where I bent them to show you something. I might as well do it on camera. This is what you got needle nose pliers for. Put it underneath, give it a twist. It's not going to look perfect, but it will do its job. This one's not touching, so I need to bend it. Again, put it underneath, give it a twist to where it's touching. And if you tighten it too tight, you might have an issue with turning the ratchet wheel. So anyway, the smallest diameter goes up because that's what the 8-point star wheel fits on. So put the strike side great wheel in place, and as you can see, it fits. The great wheel itself fits between this wheel and this arm on this second wheel. Next thing I put on is the third wheel with warning pen. And then what goes next to the third wheel with warning pen? Have you all been paying attention? The flywheel. Flywheel always goes next, last, I should say. And then you got this piece right here, and please do not make me go to the book to tell you what this is. Bell crank lever of some sort. And the way you want to put this bell crank lever on, because I did not, and I will explain this after I put this together, sorry, is you want to, the bird arm is what the bird arm goes on. You want this tab up in the air to where you can, and see, there I go. You see what I'm missing? The thing I told you I never take off unless I absolutely have to. So stand by. Let me take all these parts off so I can put this bird, the Cuckoo locking lever into place. The reason why I told you to stand by is because I had to put on my magnifiers to put that little bitty E-clip onto that rod locking lever. My screwdrivers are magnetic, and I never did talk about this. My screwdrivers are magnetic, and when you're putting the clips into place, if you're using a magnetic screwdriver, sometimes the magnetic screwdriver will mess you up. And so you can grab a hold of the clip with a magnetic screwdriver, put it in place, and then take a wooden dowel or a non-magnetic screwdriver and push that clip into where the position that it needs to go on. But now that the clip is in place, I'm going to do a function test. And as you can see, this Cuckoo bird locking lever falls underneath the second wheel arms there. And as I was putting the strike side together, I noticed that it was missing. And so I was paying attention this time around. And I now have a small crack in this plastic wheel. And because I do, I'm going to show you what I do. Using super glue liquid and having your baking soda in hand, putting the super glue liquid onto it and blowing the rest of the baking soda off. It immediately glues. I'm not a chemist. I don't know how it works. I just know it works. And make sure you don't get it nowhere else except for the crack, because if you do, this gear is not going to work. So now I can put it all back on. How long it's going to work, I have no idea. I just know it does work. If you're doing this professionally for a living, you would want to change out that plastic wheel because you don't want a bad reputation of I took my clock to that person and they supposedly fixed my clock and I got it and it worked for a week and then it quit working. You don't want that kind of reputation. So time size together, great wheel. I should have noticed it when I didn't have to lift up that arm. Third wheel with warning pin. The fly. And then this piece right here. And as I was saying, lift up the bird post so that tab comes up. Lift that up. This curved part goes in between the third wheel warning pin and the second wheel. And very carefully put that down. Push the locking lever, and there it's all being held into place. Now I need to take the 8-day movement apart so I can show you the difference. I have 3 of the 4 nuts off, and I have the compression fitting off on here. The only levers that I need to take off is because I'm a professional and I know how to fix this stuff back. Nah, I gotta take the rack and snail off. I never did do that prior to this, and I need to take it off. I did throw it in the cleaner, hoping it would get cleaned up better. No, I didn't take it apart. No, I don't suggest that. Don't say that I do suggest that, because I don't suggest it. And I showed you why. The cleaner will not clean everything. This lever, which is the lift lock lever, will come out. I take that back. It won't come out until I take the compression clip off. I took the compression clip off the rack stop lever. It comes off. The compression clip, if you watch my video on making a tool, I say that you got to hammer this down some to get some space, and then you can take this homemade tool I got, put it into the clip, and it comes off. Now I need to put these feet on it real fast, so stand by. And I need to take the very last nut off. And I'm fixing to show you the difference between the 8-day movement and a 1-day movement. There's not that much of a difference. as you can see, the strike side is pretty well the same. Great wheel, second wheel, third wheel with warning pin, escapement wheel. Great wheel, second wheel, this extra wheel, third wheel with warning pin, escapement wheel. Time side. Great wheel, second wheel, escapement wheel. I'm sorry, I was calling the other one escapement wheel. The flywheel. Time side. Great wheel, second wheel, escapement wheel, birch assembly. Time side on this. We have a great wheel, a second wheel, a third wheel, then the escapement wheel, which is the fourth wheel, in birch assembly. So on each train, there's an extra wheel. And then in the middle of this train, you have this wheel right here. So we're going to take off each part of the 8A, starting with the birch and crutch assembly, the escapement wheel, the third wheel, the second wheel, and the second wheel has got that plastic gear that I was telling you about, which this one is also cracked and broken, and when I squeeze that, it will not squeeze back together, so this wheel will need replaced. And then the great wheel. And then you have this piece right here. You will notice that you got this piece right here, which turns the minute arbor with center wheel. This piece right here. This plastic wheel matches up with that extra part right there, where in a one-day movement, the great wheel has the plastic wheel, which matches up with the center wheel. That is the only difference on the time side. Strike side. Ply, second wheel, this part right here, which I can't remember the name. Then it has this wheel right here, which is the same thing as the second wheel on the one-day movement, because it has those two tabs that come off to trip it into cuckooing. But you have the great wheel, and then this wheel here is the wheel that has the 8-point star wheel. This wheel here, it's still the same thing. It still has that cam that I told you that I don't take off. The Pac-Man. It's the same exact wheel as the one-day movement. Well, I say it's the exact same wheel. It might be the exact same wheel. I might be able to take this one off and put it on the one-day movement, and it works for the one-day movement. I don't know. I haven't tried, but it's the exact same setup. It has the two levers that trip it into Cuckoo, and it has the Pac-Man on the opposite side of it. That is the only difference between a 1-day movement and an 8-day movement. Is this wheel right here, this extra wheel for the strike side, this wheel right here, which goes in the center, which turns the minute arbor with center wheel, and this wheel right here, which has the plastic wheel on it instead of the gray wheel. There are the 1, 2, 3 extra parts. Other than the fact, if an 8-day movement has bushing wear, when in doubt, put a bushing in it. If it's oblonged, as I said in the last video, you definitely need a bushing in it. But when in doubt, put a bushing in it, or you will be taking it back apart because you can't get it to stay running, and you'll have to put a bushing in it. Getting back to the 1-day movement here, we got all the parts in. And by the way, this is a East Meckenbecker movement, this 8-day movement. It's identified as an 8-day movement, 34, and then a 1. That 1 says the style of movement. It has nothing to do with the day code, okay? Some people would say that's the letter I. That book I showed you, remember, it doesn't use the letter I. That 1 is the type of movement this is. Just like this movement says A25, the A is the type of movement this is. This 34-1 is the type of movement. Because it doesn't have a count wheel, and because it doesn't have the date code, which started in 1970, this movement was made in the 60s. If it had a DRGM number on it, remember I told you in the history video that the DRGM is what's considered a patent for the Germans, and they only used it in the 1950s. But because it doesn't have the DRGM and because it doesn't have the date code, this movement was made in the 60s by East Meckenbecker, and East Meckenbecker, in my personal opinion, is one of the best clock makers out there for modern day, for vintage, and depending on your definition of modern day movements. So anyway, getting back to this, we got the levers on, we got it all together. So what we have to do is put the burge and crutch assembly, into its hole, and then slide it up on there. And once you got it slid up, the object here is to get the nuts started. Once you get the nuts started, your mission is almost complete. I said started. I didn't say tighten them down. I said started. And here I got really lucky because I could start probably all 4 nuts. And I always start with the time side first. And you can use a tool like this to push and to move the pivots. With 1 day movements, it's so much easier for me just to use my hands. Always start with the time side. Getting the great wheel into place, the great wheel fell into place, I could tighten that nut tighter. The second wheel, getting it to fall into place, it fell into place. Now the escapement wheel, getting it to fall into place. It fell into place, and now the verge, getting it to fall into place. It fell into place. So I could tighten this nut up tighter. This nut, I could tighten tighter. The escapement wheel came out, so I need a, there it goes. Now I'm working on the strike side. I want to make sure that the gong levers and the high note and low note lift levers fall into place properly. This bell crank, I need to push it over to make it fall into place. You notice where my hand is? My hand is, I'm making sure that this tab stays inside the movement. I am going to use my tool. You can use a pair of tweezers, but I'm going to use my tool here. Looking at the top of the pivots, and once I put this flywheel into place, this should fall down. I need to tighten up this nut. Something is not where it needs to be because the movement did not fall down. And I see what it is. It's this bell crank assembly came out at the bottom. And watch when I put it in its hole that the movement is just, the rear plate is just going to fall into place. And see, there it did. And you would want to do a function test. I have an issue with the Virgin crutch assembly. It doesn't have any end shake, so it will not tick. So I'm doing a function test on the strike side to make sure all the wheels turn, and they do. I'm going to tighten up the 2 nuts on the strike side. I want to make sure that the pivots are in on the time side, and they are. But I have no end shake in the birch and crutch assembly tweezers, and I'm going to check for end shake on everything else. I'm checking for end shake on the strike side first. Without end shake, your movement will not work. And you want to check every wheel to make sure that you have some end shake. Now I'm checking for end shake on the time side. I just don't have any end shake on, or that much end shake. I think that this plate, one of these plates, got bent, is what I'm thinking. I'm going to take a screwdriver. This is my movement. What you do with your movements is totally up to you. I'm going to take a screwdriver because I think that it got bent, and I'm going to bend underneath where the birch and crutch assembly goes to see if I can create end shake. I do have some end shake now. I don't know if you could see it or not, but watch this pivot back here. It comes in and out. There is some end shake. There's not a lot of end shake, but there is some end shake. I have more end shake now on the second wheel. I don't have any end shake on the escapement wheel. Again, I think this plate got damaged. If I had put bushings in this movement, then I would know what was wrong. But because I didn't put bushings in, I think plate got damaged. So I'm going to take the back plate off real fast. And this tool is magnetic also, so things stick to it. I'm hoping it's the back plate because I'm taking it off. And I'm going to, there's some damage, right? I could feel a bump right here. It's where I told you it looked like somebody pinged this. I could feel a bump right here, and that's causing me not to have end shake. So let me see if I can get something flat so I can. This is Mark figuring things out. Let me see if I have a flat metal ruler. Stand by. I know I got one, so stand by. Watch what happens when I slide this thing along the movement. As you can see there, it's touching the movement all the way. And then here in this area, I can rock this thing back and forth. And then this area, it goes flat again. So right where that damaged area is where it doesn't sit right. And so I'm going to see if I can straighten it out. So stand by. Keep well sockets come in handy. And these plates are really thin, so you don't need to hit that hard. So now I'm going to put this rear plate back on, and hopefully I have end shake. I need to put the birch and crutch assembly back on. And because I did it off camera, see, it is still the same movement. 25A3, Backemeyer and Clemmer. This little piece here came out, so I need to put it back on. And I'm kind of shaky. I don't know. My fingers are too big. These hemostats come in handy. I like using them. There we go. It's locked into place. Now I put this back on. Put in the hole, sliding it up. These Minute Arbor center wheel has to go in its hole before you can get anything else done. Again, my hand is on that bird post to keep that tab in place. The striking lever great wheel has to go in its hole, and the thing fell out, so no big deal. I'll just put it back in place. It worked great the first time. Why couldn't it have been a bent up movement. Because that's not how you learn. You don't learn things when everything is perfect. Sometimes things got to be screwed up before you can learn things. So again, what's the object here? Is to get the nuts started. So here I can get 2 nuts started. I don't know if me flipping that light will help you out or not. It definitely helps me out. I can get 3 nuts started. If things were to stay into place, it'd be so much easier. Putting a little bit of pressure, because I want the bottom 2 nuts started and tight. Time side great wheel, second wheel, escapement wheel, time side fell into place. Strike side, the bird rod locking lever is throwing a fit. The third wheel warning pin and there everything fell into place. So now up escapement wheel, sorry, the virgin crutch assembly came out. So I have to loosen a nut and I choose the time side because it's the easiest section to put back in and take the nut off so I can lift up the plate a little bit to put the birch assembly in. And because I took the nut off, the escapement wheel fell out of place and the second wheel fell out of place. Now I can put the nut back on. Sometimes the threads of the post will stop you too, so putting a little bit of pressure will not hurt anything. Look at there. You see that? That tells me I have inch shake now, and I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to tighten up these nuts, first of all, after I check to make sure that the time strike side is working. Great wheel, second wheel, escapement wheel. And you see that escapement wheel? You see how it bounces back and forth? On an 8-day clock, you cannot have that. On a 1-day clock, with very little pressure, and I'm putting very little pressure, it is ticking away. So 1-day clocks, modern 1-day clock, vintage 1-day clocks, 1-day clocks with rack and snail, I should say, are lenient with bushing wear. Antique and count wheel clocks are not lenient with bushing wear. You see that thing bounce all over the place? How long will this clock run? I've got clocks in my house that I told you before that I started repairing Cuckoo clocks in 2019. There are clocks in my house that have been running since 2019, and they will still run today. They have bushing wear. 1-day Cuckoo clocks are very lenient in bushing wear. So now we have to put together the lift lock lever. Goes on next. And it falls, this section right here falls into this just above the cam. And I meant to tell you something on this lift lock lever. This tab right here will hit that third wheel warning pin. That is what stops it when the clock goes into warning. It stops at third wheel warning pin, just like that. You see, when I hit it, it stopped. And that's because it's in warning. And once it comes out of warning, it continues to rotate. But while it's in warning, and it's in warning when one of these two levers, these tabs, put it in warning, it doesn't rotate. That is what puts it in warning and keeps it in warning. But as soon as this falls, which takes it out of warning. I'm sorry I failed to mention that earlier. And then the rack stop lever goes on. And the rack stop lever it fell into the cam here, but I want to put something on that will prevent these things from moving. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to put these levers here, because remember I said that these things didn't have the clips, they had these levers. And I don't want them too tight to where they don't fall freely. See, that is too tight. So I have to take it off, back it off some. It's got to have some space in it. The same way with those compression clips, brand new ones versus used ones is a little bit different, but put a little bit of space in between these. That way this falls freely. The clips that I told you push in on the side, the groove that the clips fall into are positioned just right to allow it to have some space. So if you don't like those compression clips and you want to put regular E-clips in, make sure that you put the clip in to where it has a little bit of space to allow it to fall freely, or you're going to be mad that you put a groove in it so close that it doesn't allow the parts to fall freely. See, I don't have this with enough space to allow it to fall freely, so I have to loosen it up some. Which comes to the part that if you are adjusting these from behind, you already got the movement in, and I told you this is for the music. This lever here, because it has the hole in, that's to start the music. It pulls on the wire. This lever here is to, and I got it turned on back. I got them both backwards, but it doesn't matter. This is what stops the governor fan. If you push these things on too tight and tighten up the screws and your clock don't work, it's because you got these things shoved up too close to the movement. Back them off some. So now I want to do a function test. I'm putting a lot of pressure on this, okay? With a 320 weight, I want to move this thing so it's standing up straight, and I'll explain here in a second. I'm putting a lot of pressure on, and I was hoping with me moving that thing up straight would fix it. But because I'm putting a lot of pressure on, that might be the reason why it's not going in and stopping, going into the Pac-Man's mouth. Well, I forgot to put the wire on it also, okay? And you'd be surprised what this wire does. This wire, like I said, it pushes down the rack stop lever. So now I'm going to do a function test, see what happens. You see that? You see what that wire did? I'm putting the same amount of pressure on. That's the purpose of that wire. Maybe that's why I did that. Do you think? Second step, or next step, the minute wheel with minute pinion. Some clocks have a bushing that you put down first. Just Mike worked on a clock that it had a bushing that you put down first. That way this minute wheel with minute pinion would catch those teeth. The rack and the snail basically have to be put on at the same time frame because of this lever right here. And I want to see where the hour is. I'm pretty sure that's the hour Remember I told you there was 2 different notches? Pretty sure this is the half hour, which it is, because it only moved enough to go 1 notch. So I want to go back to the hour. Okay, now because I'm back on the hour, I want to make sure everything's down. Now that I'm back down on the hour, I want to turn the snail so the tab there. I want to turn the snail so this tab that's on the rack falls onto the 1 o'clock position, not in the very tip of the 1 o'clock position, but in that area. And I'll explain why in a second. The arm on the rack has became bent, and so the tab falls down behind the snail, and that's why I was looking to make sure all the parts were down before I bent that arm, because you see it falls behind the snail. I have the snail to where that tab should be catching the 1 o'clock position, but it's not. So I have to bend that arm so it raises up some. I don't want to raise it too much, just enough to catch the tab on the snail. So now it's in the 1 o'clock position. The clock just struck 1, so now it's going to go to the half hour position. I want you to notice something. I explain what I need to do, but this tab right here is not going into the notches of the rack, and I'm pretty sure the reason why is because this tab needs to be bent some. I bent it, and now it's falling into the notches. It was pointing down too far, so when it fell into place, it was lifting the rack up when it touches the snail. So it has to fall into the notches or something is wrong. And I've been doing this long enough that I already know what is wrong. So that just struck the half hour position, and you notice where the tab is, it's still in the 1 o'clock area of the snail, and that's exactly what you want. If it was over here in the 2 o'clock position, you notice how these positions get smaller as you go around, and that's why I make sure the clock just struck on the hour, and then I rotate the snail to the 1 o'clock position. That way, by the time I'm over to the 12 o'clock position, it is functioning properly. And you need to take the time and go through all the, see, it fell into the second notch and into the notch, not on top of the teeth. You have to go through every one of these positions to do a proper functioning test. But for the purpose of this video, I'm skipping to the 11 o'clock position. I want to make sure that it's just struck you see, I was looking at the tab to see where it's at. See if it fell into the notches. And I don't remember whether we're on the half-hour position or the 12 o'clock position. I think this section that's coming up is the half-hour position. This is the hour position. You see how it's still touching the top of the tooth? That means I have to adjust this tab a little bit more. Still not quite there, so I need to adjust it some more. Now we're in the notch. Whether we're in the 13th notch, the 12th notch, the 14th notch, I have no idea, and I think they should have put numbers, or they should have scratched every one of these things for the 12 o'clock position. That way you won't have to count. But this is the way I count it. But because we're in a notch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is 11, and this is 12, and the bird quits cuckooing. We're going to do that again so I could show you each step. It just fell into the 12 o'clock position. It's because there's a weight on here, and as soon as it falls into that 12 o'clock position, the great wheel starts turning. Watch the bird post. The bird comes out. It starts cuckooing. 1, 2, 3. The wire for the Pac-Man is what is lifting the rack up. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The post goes back in. The bird's cuckoo stop lever unreleases from that gadget that I told you I can't remember the name of. In fast motion. Watch this post right here. Bam. Bird's done. Clock position. You see where it fell? It fell in the 12 o'clock position area toward the right. If it would fall in this corner area, you have to remember, while all this is going on, the clock is still ticking away. And by the time, if it was to fall into that corner area, by the time it stopped cuckooing, this tab is now stuck on the snail, and at 5 to 10 minutes to 1, your clock is going to stop. So this is why you do these function tests. Because I dropped the rack, I'm going to go ahead and get it back up there. Yes, I could have lifted it up. 12:30 position. Watch the tab on the rack stop lever. Falls into the notch. See this tab? It's up here. It's not down here. It will never go down here if the clock is working properly. Because we started with the 1 o'clock position, that was 12:30. We have to finish with the 1 o'clock position. And now we have the tab is not quite in the teeth. And that's because the 1 o'clock and the 12 o'clock is a little bit off. But the good thing is, will it still cuckoo? Yes. But it should be in that notch. And so, but the good thing is, where we started is where we finished. And that is what I'm trying to get across. Do the function tests, because if you don't do the function tests when the movement is out of the case, when you put it all back in, you hook up the bellows, you start making it tick away, and it doesn't cuckoo right on you, you're going to wish you'd done this function test. I think we are over an hour now, and so I need to stop this video, and maybe we will do the change in the next video. And I have to do this, show you about this in the next video. So, again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and God bless. I might have just enough room on the end of this video to put this 8-point star wheel on, but you have to make sure that you put the E-clips, not this wire, but it works, the E-clips on the 8-point star wheel along with the washer, not the 8-point star wheel, sorry, long night, minute wheel with minute pinion. Make sure you put the washer on to prevent the snail from coming off, and the E-clip, and the E-clip or wire, whatever you have to put on there, should be an E-clip. But put the wheel on, the 8-point star wheel, make sure that the cuckoo is just finished cuckooing, and then put it so the tab for the 8-point star wheel is barely missing the hammer tab, and then tighten up the screw on the 8-point star wheel. I got it wrong. It moved on me. What I should have said was put some pressure on the great wheel. And I forgot to say that. Put some pressure on the great wheel. and then move the 8-point star wheel. This is after it's done cuckooing. Move the 8-point star wheel to where it needs to be. Tighten up the screw, and then do a function test. And I need to move this around somewhere so it drops more. This ain't dropping because of that piece of wire that I have on it. So do a function test and watch the hammers. When it's done cuckooing, the tab for the 8-point star wheel should be missing. There should be some clearance in between this tab and the 8-point star wheel, and the Cuckoo, the high note lift lever and the low note lift lever should be sharing the same space. In this case, the gong lever is touching the 8-point star wheel, and I don't want that, because if it's touching, when the clock goes into warning, it will gong, and you don't want it to gong until it's out of warning. Lefty loosey, righty tighty, Mark. I'm having trouble getting my screwdriver in there. Now I can move it. And I want the 8-point star wheel tab to have clearance between the tab and the gong lever. And then, because I moved it, I now have to do another function test. And that is where it needs to be. As you can see, there's space in between the gong lever and the tab, and the high note lever and the low note lever is sharing the same space. I have another video that explains all that, and I want to stop there so I can add this video to the video set that I'm creating.